even in the, it's all about leverage, right? And it's all about, and that comes in many different forms. But even in a down economy, that is when the employers have more control. Or if they really want you, then you have leverage, and they can really want you for any different number of reasons, even in a down economy. So that's the theme is don't negotiate, sort of for what you're worth, and don't underestimate your ability to negotiate. The other side can always say no, as they said to you, and then you can always go somewhere else. So that's really important. And a lot of people either don't realize they can negotiate, or they don't understand how much the other side may want them, and so they under negotiate. They leave stuff on the table, often because they didn't know about it. But you can take your situation and talk about the different kinds of times when you could negotiate yourself and when you might have leverage and so forth.
I mean, I'm in the sales business development world. If you don't expect me to drive a hard negotiation for my contract, okay, for my employment contract, why the hell are you hiring me? I mean, that makes no absolute sense. Obviously, if I'm not negotiating a good employment contract for me, whether I ultimately win or not, I mean, you should be happy with that. Like, I don't get it when I get a salesperson or I'm hiring a salesperson and we're trying to get them. Sometimes they're just hungry and they're like, hey, this is where I want to go. Next step, I'll do anything. And that's fine. Other people, you're trying to, swirl onto you, and it's like they negotiate hard. And then, a lot of HR people may view, that's a pain in the ass type person. No, we want to steer clear of that. It gives off that vibe, I think, from HR crews around the world for that type. But I'm like, no, that's exactly what you want. That's why we're hiring this guy, because he's a good, hard negotiator, or girl. What do you think about that?
I agree 100%. And I think all of your listeners should just replay what you just said. And for two reasons I want to bring up. One is I hear that all the time, and even at a C-suite level. Should I tell them I have a lawyer? Should I negotiate? I'm like, that company is hiring you. They expect you to have a lawyer at your level. They expect you to negotiate hard. They don't expect you to punch them in the face, but they expect you to have a hard negotiation, because as soon as they hire you, metaphorically speaking, I want to make sure we're metaphorical, you all go to bed together, right? You go to bed together, and they then want you to negotiate hard for the company. So how much respect are they going to have for you otherwise? And so I have that conversation over and over again, probably multiple times a month. The second thing I want to say, which you're talking about sales, is that people, multiple times in my career, I've had EVPs of worldwide sales of companies who can negotiate $10 million deals, $50 million deals, $100 million deals for the company, but they can't negotiate for themselves out of a paper bag. It's a fascinating sort of psychological dynamic that I'm not really sure about why it happens. I'm sort of like some psychologists could say.
Yeah, probably like the plumber that doesn't have hot water in their own house, that type of situation.
It's true. And so sometimes they come to me, and I've been in some wild situations, these EVPs where the whole company rolls up to them and they're being commissioned off of everybody else, if you will. And they don't have a commission plan themselves. And so they come and, once we help them out, and then we give a lot of shadow counsel, it'll work out. But sometimes on the back end, they get fired and they don't. And they haven't negotiated a good deal for themselves, which they hopefully learn from, and then make sure that in the next company it goes to. But that's a really interesting dynamic. But what you said originally, I just wanted to make that point, because you're going to have listeners. You're going to have listeners out there that it's going to be outside their comfort zone and to negotiate. But doesn't matter if it's outside your comfort zone. If you don't negotiate, the other side, whether it's an investor in your company as an entrepreneur or the employer, they're getting more than they should. They're taking advantage of you in a way because it's outside your box, and that's comfort zone. So I say,
I know you're the legal side of things, that you're not the HR person, but why when you get a sales rep or an executive, especially, I think it comes to especially from the sales side of thing, because of the fact that those people sell for a living, but although sometimes there's exceptions where they don't, sell for themselves good, they just kind of curl up in the ball like, okay, mommy. But outside of that, they, I know a lot that they negotiate hard, counter, 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 counter. And it takes a minute because they're trying to get the best deal possible and not leave one single dime on the table. Why do so many companies look down at that? I mean, shouldn't that be a good thing if you got someone that has a quote unquote, like give a shit attitude is like off the charts?
Well, so there's different reasons for that. First of all, take HR. Let's just discuss them. Their job is to protect the company. So that's what they do for a living. And almost every company, if you're getting terminated, you, David, were being terminated, they would put HR between you and your boss because they run interference. They make sure, the company decide they didn't want you anymore. They say whatever the company needs. So in a circumstance of negotiation, they don't want to have a lot of negotiation because their job is 100% for the company. They don't run a business. HR people do not make business decisions. There's somebody behind them that's making the business decision on how much to pay you, how much equity to give you, and so forth. Now let's take the business itself. Some managers, for example, are yes men and yes women. They don't want to hear anything else. So if you negotiate hard, they're going to be worried in their mind, even if it's not conscious, that you're going to come in there and you're not going to be a yes person, right? They don't operate that way. Now, there are other managers who are very self-assured. They want to have the best person out there, just like I described negotiating with them, because the minute you sign on that dotted line and you become the company's employee, they want you out there negotiating for themselves. So a lot of that has to do with personality of who it is your boss is going to be and who it is the company dynamic and so forth. But I can tell you, I've negotiated, on behalf of or been shadow counsel for many executives, and even at the senior level and many mid-level managers. And they've negotiated hard, but once they sign on, they become wonderful employees and the company really values them.